Hello, I'm Amanda Whewell and welcome to week 5 of the Mexican Embroidery Project. This week is all about the stitch and I'm going to show you how to do the 2 different stitches that you need to do to complete your embroidery. I'm going to break it down into easy sections and you've got as long as you like to do this. It's not just to be done in 1 week. We're not going to be collecting the embroideries in till September, I think, or at the end of the summer anyway. So this week you're going to need your design drawn on your fabric. You're also going to need your selection of threads. There we go. A pair of scissors, any scissors will do just to cut the threads. Your needles, which are in a little black folder. Your embroidery hoop and the small piece of fabric and the design from the PDF, or if you can't print this design off, you can trace onto here, you can draw the shapes onto here. So those are the things you'll need. The rest of the video will be done in close-up demonstrations of the stitches and things. So if you want to get your bits and pieces together, and I'll see you in a minute. Bye.
Okay, so the first thing you need to do is to draw the shapes that we're going to test the stitches out on. So you can trace these from your handout if you've got one, or from the PDF which you can download at eARTh.org, or you can just draw them on freehand. We want them to fit inside your hoop, so if you haven't got the handout you can just do a quick circle to give you an idea where they need to go. If you have got the handout, you can just trace the shapes. So we need a shape like a leaf shape. Doesn't matter where they go. We need 2 parallel lines. You don't need to use a ruler or anything. They don't have to be perfectly straight. We need a swirl. And we need an egg shape, or a sort of oval. Now you probably would be better to tape your fabric down like you did when you traced your design with a bit of masking tape, but I've just laid mine on. And on the egg or the oval shape you want some wavy lines like this going across. And we're going to use these shapes to practice the stitches before we go on to the main embroidery. And just draw those on with pencil. So that's what you need to do first. Then we're going to fit the fabric into the embroidery hoop. So you need to twist, you might have to hold the nut, twist the screw and loosen it so that your hoop comes apart into 2. Then we'll get rid of the handout now, we don't need that anymore. And you put the piece of the hoop without the screw in it down on your table or your surface. You put your fabric on top and sort of line it up so your shapes are inside that hoop. And then the one that you've loosened a bit, you might need to loosen it a bit more to get it on. You fit that over the top like that, so the fabric's quite tight. Then just pull it through around the edges, pull it around, get it nice and tight, and then tighten the screw a bit. It's easier if you hold that little bolt, nut, whatever you call it, and twist. Now you don't want to do it too tight because you won't be able to get it undone again, but you do need this quite taut so it sounds like a drum, and then just press it around the edges, so make sure it's all quite tight in there. And that's your embroidery inside the hoop. So I'm going to put that to the side now, and I'm going to look at how to thread your needle. Now with your thread, you don't want a really massive long piece. You might think it's going to be quicker because you won't have to keep threading your needle and starting and stopping, but it will get tangled. So you should measure a piece from your fingers like that. Now you won't be able to see this, but down to your elbow, about 35-40 centimeters long. So I'm going to trim that off there with the scissors. So this is the stranded cotton, so there's 6 threads in here. You can see if you carefully at one end, you can separate them out. You can see you've got 6 separate threads in there. Now you're going to work with 3. The easiest way to separate them is just to take one, keeping the rest of the threads in between your thumb and finger there, and just pull the one thread out, and then put that down to the side, and then do the same again. So then straighten that out so it doesn't get knotty. Take another thread, just one, holding the rest of them between your thumb and forefinger. You'll see it will sort of bunch up at the back there, but the thread will pull right through. Put that one down, straighten your threads out, and go again. So let's get the third one. We need one more. That's 2 there. One more, and pull it through, holding those. Might bunch up, but if it gets a bit stuck, just pull it down a bit. Should pull out nicely. So we've got 3 separate ones there, and we've got 3 left in here. So we've got 2 threads that we can use for our embroidery. That one, you can separate them if you want to. They tend to stitch a bit better if they're separated. They tend to twist up a little bit like this, but you don't have to. So you've got 1 thread there, and then we've got the other 3 here. So let's pick up the other 3, and you're going to put them back together. So there's 1, 2, 3, and they do tend to stitch a little bit smoother if you've separated them to start with. So in one end of that you're going to tie a knot. Now I just twist it around my finger like that, pull it through and tie a knot. Try and push it down towards the end so you haven't got too much thread there, and 1 knot is enough for this because it's quite thick. On the other end you need to thread your needle. Now in your little wallet here you've got 2 needles. One is a normal embroidery needle, that's the slightly thinner one, and you should be able to thread that one if you've done a bit of sewing before. But if you struggle with threading the needle, there's a chenille needle here which has a bigger eye. It's still sharp at the end, but it has a much bigger eye, so it will be easier to thread. So I'll use that one for the demonstration. Now the easiest way to thread all 3 together is to put the 3 threads over your needle. This is going towards the pointed end, and slide them off like that, and then you've got the 3 folded bits there, and you can just slot your needle over there and it will pull through. And then you want it so you've got your knotted end here, the knotted end, and then just a bit hanging on the other side. You don't want to be working with your thread doubled all the way, just a bit. So there's your threaded needle. I'll put those other 3 to the side for later and get the hoop back. So here's the hoop. Now we're going to start off with the herringbone stitch, and we're going to work it to start with between these 2 straight lines. Now you want your knot on the back, that's the easiest way, and you want to bring your needle up from the back. You can just keep poking around till you get the right place. I would start on one of the bottom line, doesn't really matter, but start on the bottom line and bring it through. Don't pull it so hard that your knot comes through, but that should be on the back there. That knot should be enough to hold it in place. Now we're going to work our stitch from left to right, but every time we take a stitch we're going to go in from right to left, and we're going to work at a diagonal. So my threads come up there, I'm going to come diagonally across, I'm going to go in there, pull it through. Just you see how that's a little bit loose on one of them, just pull it through, get it even, and then you want to come back a little bit along that line. So I'm going to come up there, pull it through. Now we're going to come diagonally down to the bottom again. So I've gone diagonally across, you pull your thread, you can see that's going at a diagonal, pull it through, and then come back a little way. So I'm poking that needle up there. Now you can do it in one movement, so we can go diagonally across over here and put your needle down and then back up, so you've made your little backward stitch in one movement. That's going to be quicker and easier to work. So I'll do that again, across to here, down and up, and you keep going. Now this time I'm going to start working the stitches a little bit closer together, so diagonally down to the bottom. This time I'm not going to go quite so far over, and I'm going to do a slightly smaller stitch there, and then I'm coming across but not quite so far over, and a slightly smaller stitch. And this is what we're going to do all over the design, between all the lines, this herringbone stitch, but working it closer together like this. So diagonally across from left to right, and then a little stitch back from right to left, and pull it. If while you're doing this, I'll do this one more stitch and tell you, your threads get tangled, you can just get your needle, don't need to unthread it, run your needle down to the bottom and just pull through your fingers like that, and it should straighten your threads up. If they get tangled, you can do that, so keep making sure you straighten your threads. So you can practice going along this line. This is quite big. We shouldn't have many areas on the design where the stitches are quite this long, and you can get closer and closer together, so I can go closer and closer, so you can get to the point where you're doing your stitch in and you're actually coming out where your last stitch went in. I'm running out of thread here, so I'm going to go in, and so it's getting much closer together now, and this is how we'll fill in the shape. But just start off nice big stitches till you get the hang of it and the movement of the stitch. Now don't ever let your end get too short, that's really quite short. Although it seems a bit of a pain, keep starting and stopping, it's much better than getting tangled up with really long threads or leaving your end and getting this bit caught in. So to finish off, we want to be on the back again, so I'm just going to do the diagonal stitch there and pull it right through. Now I'm going to turn it over, and on the back you can see you've just got these two little rows of like a running stitch or a back stitch where it's got close together, just two rows of straight stitches. And this is why this style of embroidery was done, because it's economical with the thread. You can be covering space on the front, but you're not wasting thread on the back. Now to finish off, I usually just thread my bit of thread that's left a few times through these stitches backwards and forwards. You can knot it if you want to. You could loop it through like that, make a little knot, or just thread it through. If you're not sure about finishing it, just leave your ends dangling, because I can always finish the ends off once you've sent it back. If you cut the end off, if you're not sure it's secure, that's secure. I've got a knot there, I'm pulling it and it's not pulling my stitches, it's secure, so I can then cut that much shorter. But if you're not sure, leave the ends dangling. When you've finished off the end, you need to start a new thread. I've just changed colour because it's easier for you to see, but if you were still carrying along this line, you would normally keep the same colour to the end of the line, but I've changed colour so you can see. So you want to come up where your needle would have come up with your last stitch, so you'd gone diagonally across there and you would be making your stitch backwards to there. So we want the needle to come up around there, so we're coming up there and then carry on, come diagonally across, do your little stitch backwards, diagonally across, little stitch backwards, and just carry on. So normally you do the whole line in the same colour like I say, but I've just changed so you can see, and you would carry on like that until you got to the end of the line. So that's the herringbone stitch, and that's working it between two lines. So I'm just going to take this thread across to the back. I'm going to just quickly tie a knot in it. It's probably not the easiest way to finish off, but just so I can use this thread to show you the next thing. So I'm going to tie another knot in there, and I'm just going to show you, still using the herringbone stitch, but just quickly show you how to fit it into shapes that you might have on your design. So the shapes that you've got a lot of are these leaf shapes. They're leaves, petals, ears, all sorts of things. To work it on there, you need to come up just in the corner of the leaf. Again, starting on the left, we're going to work across towards the right. And I'm just going to put my glasses on because I didn't have them on. And then we're just going to still work from the bottom line to the top line, but it's very small stitches to start with. So I'm going in on the top line and a little stitch backwards, and then in on the bottom line and a little stitch backwards. And the first few stitches are very tiny, but we're doing exactly the same thing. So on the top line, we're coming across a diagonal, little stitch backwards, across at a diagonal, little stitch backwards, and after a few stitches the lines are widening apart. Don't know if that's correct English, but you know what I mean. And there we go. So carry on like that with your stitches close together, diagonally across, in and out. Remember, if you find the in and out movement difficult, you can just go in and work out where to come out there, and you would just carry on like that. And again, it gets smaller again when you get to this end. So I think you've got the idea of that. So I'm going to take that through to the back. I'm just going to finish off with a knot, because you can always finish off with a knot if you want to, or I would usually weave it in and out. I'm just doing this to save time, so I can use this thread again for the next bit. So the next bit I'm going to show you is I've got this oval egg shape here, which we looked at, which we drew earlier, and you might have shapes like this in your design. It could be the body of an animal or something, or anything with flowers, petals with these wavy lines on. So I filled in the top bit there just as if it was doing the leaf, but following the curve on the bottom line. Now when you start this, I'm coming up there where the wavy line meets the edge, and if you go straight across to the top, you're going to get a bit wonky. So I'm going to start off by coming up and just working along the edge line. This is the kind of thing that you'll work out as you go along. And then here I'm coming down on that curve, a little stitch backwards. Now this time I'm going to come up this curve again as my top line. I'm going to go in where that green one was and work back down the line. I think there's some diagrams of this and everything, all the stitches on your printouts or your PDFs, and it is a case of just getting used to it. So I'm doing these blue stitches on this second line right up close to where the green ones are, and I'm doing that backward stitch. Then I'm coming diagonally down to here. Just always follow your pencil lines. If your pencil's getting a bit rubbed out by working it, just go over it again with more pencil. I'm just going to straighten my threads up. They've got a bit tangled. Remember we did that previously. And then carry on. So we're following the bottom of the green stitching as our top line, and this pencil line as our bottom line, and we're still working every time we're taking a diagonal stitch across and a little stitch backwards, diagonal across and a little stitch backwards. I'm just going to go around that curve so you can see. So there, here I've got to the top there, so I'm going to start working down. Just follow the pencil. You will get used to it, and once you've done a couple of lines, it will just be hopefully just nice and relaxing. You know, it might be a little bit awkward to work out to start with, but you will soon get used to it, and you just keep following the previous stitches at the top and the pencil at the bottom, and keep doing that. It doesn't matter that you can see, you know, it's not so tight together that you can see bits of fabric through there, because when it's finished we put it through the washing machine and the tumble dryer, and it sort of meshes your stitches together. And also when it's all done and you look at it from a distance, you won't notice, so you don't have to get it so close you can't see any fabric through. I'm going to finish this off now. I'm going to go down there through to the back, and this time I'll finish it off properly. Weave through the back of some of these stitches and maybe loop through to make a little knot, weave through again. Make sure when you pull it, it's not pulling your stitches. So I'm going to take that out and snip it off. So that's the herringbone stitch. Again, you can see on the back, not much thread on the back, but we're gradually filling in the front. So if you want to stop there and go and start doing some herringbone on your sample and even carry on your main design, that's fine. I'm going to carry on and demonstrate the stem stitch. That's the only other stitch you need to know, but it's a lot to take in, so just stop the video anytime where you think you need a break, or you think you just want to practice on the straight lines, and you might find some straight lines in your design. I mean, it's slightly curved, but it's still following a straight line. You might want to practice that, move on to there, and then come back to work out the leaf shapes. However you want to do it, stop and start as you like. So now I'm going to demonstrate the stem stitch. So you use the herringbone to fill all the shapes in, but if you've got a line on your design, like these lines here, just a line, not a shape, you're going to use a stem stitch. It's the only other stitch we use. So I've got a knot in my thread, and you can start at either end of the line, but again this stitch works from the left to the right. So I'm going to come up there at the very start of the line and on the left hand side, and I'm going to work around the swirl like that. Now you always need to keep your thread in front towards you. The first stitch you do is an extra big stitch, so I'm going to do like a double size stitch down to there, and then bring your needle back up halfway, so halfway back to where you started, and pull that through. So we've made a really big stitch and we've come halfway between it. Now keeping your thread in the front again, this time you're going to do a smaller stitch from there. It's still a big stitch, but a smaller space from there, and you're coming back to where that last stitch ended, keeping your thread in front of you all the time, and pull that through. So you can see your thread's coming up in the middle of the stitch, but you're judging the size from there, so you're going out and back. It's the same movement as the herringbone stitch, but we're just working, let's pull that little tangle through, we're just working on a single line rather than between lines. Now there, just pulled that through. If it gets knotty, if you try not to pull it too tight, it will usually just pull out like that. So always keeping your thread in front towards you, in, and then back to where your last stitch ended. Now I've made a mistake there, look, I've gone through that thread. I don't want to do that because that's going to spoil it. So what I'm going to do is pull my needle out and pull that stitch out. So if you catch up any previous stitches, pull it out, give it a scrape with your fingernail, that'll be fine. Just going to rethread the needle, remember over the point and through like that, and keeping the thread towards me, and I'm going in and back to where I started, and you just follow the line round. When it gets to a curve, it doesn't matter, you just keep going, always keeping, got something tangled up underneath there, always keeping this stitch in front of you. You know how I was saying to you about the threads tangle up a bit more if you haven't separated them? I think that's what this is. They're tangling a bit on this one. Not a very good demonstration, but it's good because it's showing you how things can go wrong and how you can sort it. Also, this is a bit long, so keeping the thread in front of you, stitch and back. So although we're working left to right, we're always stitching right to left, and you can just carry on. So that's the stem stitch. All the instructions are in your handouts. Sometimes it's a bit awkward with the hoop, but you do really need the hoop, because if you don't have the hoop, then your stitches will get all baggy, or they'll pull the canvas tight. So you can always move the hoop so that you're working in an area that's more comfortable. I'm just going to carry on with that, and I think pretty much that's it. Always bringing that thread to the front and keep stitching. So you don't want to sit and watch me stitch all day. It's been quite a long video. Hopefully you'll now be able to have a go at the herringbone and the stem stitch. When you want to start on your design, it's up to you where you start. You might want to start with the stem stitch, doing the straight lines, start with the body, you know, start with the flower in the middle. It doesn't matter where you start. I'm just going to take this hoop off the sample there, and then you fit it onto your design. So you could start in the centre, you could start with a bee, it doesn't matter, but whichever bit you're going to work on, fit it into your hoop like we did with the sample piece, and away you go. Start on your design. Doesn't matter where you start. And when you've done that bee, you can just move this on. You know, maybe you want to do that flower at the edge, move it on to the next section. Don't worry about if it's got stitching on it, it won't harm the stitching. So here's the sample that I've finished, but say I hadn't finished it, I could still just put that over. Don't worry about the stitching, it's not going to harm it, and then carry on. And now this one has been machine washed and tumble dried, and you'll see how it just smooths all the stitches out. They look much smoother and neater once they've been washed and dried, compared to the ones on the sample that look a bit baggy. So if your stitches look a bit baggy, don't worry, they will turn out nice. You don't need to wash and dry them. I'll do it all together so everything gets the same wash. Don't forget to return your little evaluation sheet when you've done your stitching. There's absolutely no rush. You've got till the end of the summer to do this, but when you have finished it, post it back to us. I hope you enjoy it. It might be a bit tricky to get started, but once you've got going, it should be a nice thing to stitch, and it's such a bright, colourful result. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to seeing your stitching, and I think that's it. So bye for now. I hope you've enjoyed the Otomi style Mexican embroidery workshop, and I can't wait to see all your designs and stitches. See you soon.